All right, and we're live. I see we have a lot of people tuned in, so thank you all so much for joining. I'm here with Mike, who is the founder of Brink, which is the project I've been working on that I'm sure you all are familiar with. Um, he's been a developer in the Ethereum space for a while, so he can answer any technical questions we have about 1559. Mike, if you just want to say hi and introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Mike. As Justin said, founder of Brink. We've been working on Brink for some time now. I've been working on Ethereum development applications for about 4 years. And yeah, excited about this launch viewing party. I'm glad Justin invited me. Thanks, Justin.
Yeah, well, it's always helpful to have that technical insight. Just right off the bat, we're going to keep it pretty casual. I would love to see where everyone's watching from in the comments. If you want to just post what country or state you are in, if you're in the U.S., would be really cool to see that. As some of you know, I'm actually driving cross country right now, so I'm in Albany, New York. We'll be in Boston on Friday, and I'm going to be there for a few months. But with that said, let's see. I see some questions coming in right now. Filippo asks, "Are we up at an ungodly hour on the West Coast?" No, it's only 8:15 a.m. here, so we're ready to go. Wow, it looks like we have a lot of people from Thailand, Portugal, New York City, Belgium, Zimbabwe. Awesome. South Korea, Australia. A lot of cool people calling in. And thank you guys for joining. I know Bankless is doing a live stream. If you're in this one, you should probably be in that one. For the people that watch the Super Bowl every year, I think this is like the Puppy Bowl. It's like the the off-brand edition of the viewing party, but we're happy to have you here and excited.
Don't sell
Um,
short, Justin. You know,
yeah.
you should be here. You're in the right place.
Well, we don't have the rock star guests that they have. Let's just say that. So with that said, happy to. Oh, I see someone from Missouri. That's awesome. Happy to take questions if we have them now. A couple things we have prepared. I can go through. I have that presentation ready that I did a video on that some of you probably saw about what's actually changing with 1559. I also have watched the burn up that I can share my screen there. It looks like right now this is estimated to go, or the London hard fork is estimated to go live at 8:36 a.m. Eastern time. So that's in about 17 minutes. So if there's no questions off the bat, I can jump into just going over the big changes that are happening. And I think a lot of questions are going to come up as we go through that. Does that sound good to everyone? Wow, I see a lot more people in the chat. Switzerland, Singapore, Madagascar, Brazil. Philip says, let's bring ETH to Mars. Awesome. Sweet. With that said, I'm just going to share my screen here, share a tab. And we'll go through this quickly. So this is really under the assumption that you've probably seen the video that I posted, and this is just going to be a refresher. And if you guys have technical questions, we can answer, or Mike can help with those because he is much more technically savvy than I am. Oh, that's going to make it small. All right, so if you're familiar with the current model, what's going to be used for the next 15 minutes, just an auction-based model. So it's basically a price war with gas. The highest bidder gets their transactions put through. If you can see on the right here, I know it's kind of small, and let me see if I can expand that actually. Oh, there we go. So you can see here, there's a lot of concentration in the lower end of the gas prices, and then at the high end, it's a bit more free. So if you bid a high price of gas, your transaction's likely to get mined very, very quickly. Obviously, this seems like intuitive, like it's the best model, but there's several drawbacks here. So the first is that all of the fees actually just go to the miner. The network doesn't benefit at all from these transactions. And I think that's what most people are so excited about, is that everything that happens on Ethereum now is going to benefit the network as a whole through positive price action, theoretically. So anytime a transaction happens, there's going to be a base fee that's burnt and distributed effectively to everyone. So it's basically like a share buyback that we'd see in traditional equities. The second drawback with the auction mechanism is that there's really no way to guarantee your transaction goes through. This is something we've seen in the Discord community a lot. Is there are these NFT drops, people are excited about them, but when it happens, like, you have no idea what happens to the gas price. So yesterday I was purchasing an NFT and I think the gas jumped to like 900. I might have set my transaction at 500 gas, which is actually very, very expensive, and even then I missed out. I see a question actually coming in from the audience from Ethereum Girl. What is the expected impact, if any, that this model will have in regards to miner extracted value? Is that a question you can take, Mike?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the intention of the EIP is to reduce kind of the incentives around MEV. So I believe the base fee is now burned. So there previously, like the entire gas fee went directly to um, miners, and now it's burned, or a portion of it is burned. So I think there's less incentive for miners to manipulate it. That's the intention. As far as like um, MEV related to like ordering of transactions, I'm not sure how it affects that. To be honest, I don't know, Justin,
Yeah,
if you have any insight on that.
from my understanding, so I did a live AMA with Anthony Sassano, and from my understanding, it's not really a proposed solution to MEV. I mean, the benefit here is that if the miner does like bid something at a high gas price to reorganize transactions or like extract some value, at least like a lot of a portion of that value goes back to the network as a whole because there's that burn. But from my understanding, it's not going to mitigate the possibility of MEV. Um, yeah, so that's something we're gonna have to wait on actually. Mario has a question here. Let's see. What is the plan for existing miners? Do they all have to move to BTC or LTC? So I'm sure Mike has some insights here, but just briefly, so this is not. If the question here is really, is this, are we moving to proof of stake now? We're not. This is still proof of work until the merge happens. As far as miners go, they essentially just have to prepare their mining software to start mining the fork. Is that correct, Mike? I'm not sure if I'm explaining that properly.
Yeah, I mean they really are the fork, right? Like they're adopting
Right.
the update. So all the that's what we're waiting for is for all the miners to adopt it, or I think a majority of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I don't, I don't know if they'll move to BTC or LTC. Is he saying like Ethereum's over, like they're all going to leave and go mine on another chain? Possibly. I hope not.
Yeah, it's funny. I'll get back to the presentation in a second, but just a funny anecdote. I remember, I don't know who I was hearing talk about this, but before the merge, so what's the incentive for miners to mine the last block before the ETH2 merge and we switch to proof of stake? So it's kind of like the miners, it would have to be very coordinated, but they could theoretically revert on that or rebel on that last block and not mine the last block, so the Ethereum chain never moves to ETH2, which would be obviously very fascinating.
Yeah, and that does happen. I believe. I think I'm not, and I'm going to get this wrong, but there have been hard forks that were planned in the past. I think on BTC specifically that did not go through because they weren't adopted by miners. I'm not sure if that's happened on Ethereum before, but yeah, that's definitely a possibility. Like these are decentralized systems. It's not like one company or foundation can say, okay, we're going to this new upgrade and kind of mandate that. Like the whole system has to adopt that, and that's what a hard fork really is like all the miners kind of adopting that upgrade.
Yeah, so there should be theoretically there'll be less value for the miner after this merge, just because that base fee again goes back to the network and is burnt. But I think we could expect like a normal market equilibrium, right? Like, so if the profit or incentive goes down to miners exit the system, it becomes less difficult, and then miners get higher value from each transaction on average. Uh, just moving back to this, obviously the merge is happening very quickly, so I'll just try to go through this in the last few minutes. And again, Mike, if you see any questions from the audience, jump in, and I'll try to monitor that as well. Um, so yeah, and the last drawback here of the auction mechanism is, let's just say I am doing a flash loan or some type of very urgent transaction on Ethereum, something I need to happen right now. Right now, there's no way. So if I had to do that, I would have to overbid and overpay for gas to ensure that it gets mined on the next block. And right now, if you overpay and if you actually didn't need as much gas as you thought you did to get in on that next block, you never get that gas back. So all of that overpayment goes straight to the miner, which is obviously not ideal. Just checking the audience here for any questions. I see Tashar has a question about block size. I will get to that in just a second, so don't worry, we'll cover that. It's actually really interesting that how they went about solving that problem. So I don't want to bore you guys with the fee structure too much. Again, a good resource is that video I put out, and there's some other great videos about 1559. But as I mentioned, there's that new fee structure. So essentially, there's a base fee. That base fee always gets burnt. So that is basically like a share buyback to everyone that holds ETH. And the base fee is the minimum fee you need to actually get included in a block. And this will vary and is set by the network based on demand. Next, we have the priority fee, which is essentially a tip that the user sets and gets paid directly to miners. And this is estimated to be about 2 gwei. So if you've been following gas recently, gas might be, I don't know, maybe 50 gwei on average. So if the base fee was, say, like 48 gwei, a 2 gwei priority fee tip would go to the miner. So a lot of that value really is going back to the network. Now, lastly, is that max fee, and that's the most the user is willing to spend on a transaction. And so this helps solve the overbidding problem because anything in excess of the priority fee and the base fee gets returned back to the user. So if you need your transaction to go through in the next block, you could set a max fee of, say, 10,000 gwei or whatever crazy number you could think of, and then everything that's not required by as a tip for the miner gets sent back to you. So you don't really have to worry about overpaying, which is obviously a great advantage here. Let's see, no more. Doesn't look like there's questions. Tushar, here's the block size question you were asking about. I'd be very curious, Mike, if you had any insights on this from a technical level of how this was constructed. But essentially, with 1559, we have adaptive blocks. So before 1559, which is now for the next 5 or so minutes, all blocks are the exact same size. So that means a certain amount of transactions can get stuffed into those blocks. Now, after 1559, the block size can be variable. So there's a couple reasons for this, but the main benefit here is that one, we can help smooth out gas price volatility. So if gas is very high, the block size can expand to accept more transactions and hopefully lower the gas price and smooth out gas price volatility. And if there's not much network activity, well, let's just shrink the block size. We can help the network that way, and we don't have to stuff many transactions into the block, and so we'll just lower the block size. Now, in addition to the benefits of reducing volatility, this can help us increase decentralization because we can have a higher transaction load in each block because they're variable now, but we can still make sure that the network doesn't get too large and that the network can still be decentralized and everyone can run it, can mine transactions and in the future validate them. In addition, since we have fewer inflationary rewards when the blocks are deflationary, that counteracts the large block size, which means that we can essentially incentivize the network for longer. Whereas there's that Bitcoin problem. What do we do after the last inflationary reward is spent? This basically just gives us a lot longer of a timeline. Just checking here to see if there's any questions on that. Can this affect front running at all? My hunch is no, Mike. Do you have any insights on that?
Yeah, I also think that it does not affect front running. I mean, maybe there may be some other people who know more about the EIP have a different idea of this, but I feel like front running is just if you give the miner a direct incentive to like put a transaction somewhere in the block in order for them to get a reward like that, there's nothing about this EIP that stops like a sandwich attacker from doing that, or from the miner itself from doing that. Like they can still do things that are unrelated to block rewards, like a sandwich attack on an AMN, for example. That can still be done. I don't think there's anything about this EIP specifically that stops that.
Awesome. Just checking Watch the Burn right now. It actually crashed for a second. I imagine there's a ton of traffic. They probably should have been planning for that, but I'll make sure to switch over once we have that up and we're getting close to the hard fork happening. Let me just see if there's any. How will layer two chains be impacted? Um, that's a great question, Mike. You probably have again probably have more insight there. My hunch is that they've prepared for all of the changes. So all the miners have had to load a new client. I would assume the layer two operators like Optimism and Arbitrum have made the changes they need to make. I would hope so at least.
Yeah, I'd assume so. Like they would for any hard fork. Or I guess this might be the first like big hard fork those platforms are going through on the layer one side. So I have no idea, but I assume they're still going to work. Um, it's certainly not going to like um, uh, negate the need for layer two. Like layer two is still needed. This is not like drastically increasing throughput or reducing gas price on Ethereum in any way. It's just I think the benefit of this is just to make gas price prediction more stable on the layer one.
Yeah. Um, cool. So now I'm looking for a good alternative source for Watch the Burn because it looks like that's crashed. So I have Etherscan up in case Watch the Burn doesn't happen. It looks like it's estimated to go through in about 1 minute. So I'm gonna switch over my screen. I'll get back to that presentation after. 1 second here. And if anyone knows of an alternative to Watch the Burn that will show us the burn live, I imagine Watch the Burn's probably going to be down for a while. Here we go. 5 blocks left. Mike, as we wait for this to go through, can you talk a bit about the process from a miner perspective of how this works? They essentially load the changes and then it's just an automatic switch. That I mean, there's everything right now is planned. There's nothing that needs to be done.
Yeah, I believe so. Like if you're running a miner and you have not done the upgrade, like if the majority of them have not upgraded, then that block would hit and nothing would happen, I assume.
Yeah.
And then if you have like, a portion of miners that don't do the upgrade and a portion of miners that do, then you have a chain split. But if the majority of, or if pretty much all the miners have done the upgrade, then that block hits and it'll go forward as a single chain. Like
And
there's
it,
hard fork doesn't always mean, and this addresses a question that's in the chat. It doesn't always mean chain split. Like it could, if there's enough consensus among the miners, then it'll be a single chain moving forward. If there's some contention here and some miners want to do it and others don't, then you can have a chain split. And the big Ethereum chain split of the past was like Ethereum Classic and Ethereum. So
awesome.
that was a chain split. Yeah. Oh, go ahead. Sorry,
No,
Justin.
I was going to say, it looks like the block was mined. So you can see here, block 12,965,000 went through. Etherscan was ready to go. You can see here the base fee per gas was 1 GUI. Obviously, it's probably due to it being the first block. And you can see right there that 0.03 ETH were burned in that first block. Um, this is obviously very cool. I actually wish I wish we had
Nice.
planned to get a transaction mined in that block. That would have been fun to have a on the fork block itself to have one of your transactions go through. But I'll just go to the next block and see. You can see another 0.33 ETH was burned there. Let's see.
Base fees going up.
Base fees going up. Yeah, so I'm not
As
sure how they were trying to scale that up. That
I
is
think,
awesome.
did they just hard code it to start at one GUI? That's interesting. So it'll just continue to go up, I'm guessing. Like,
Or down, yeah, but presumably
well,
up for now.
probably up for a little while if it started at one.
Yeah. God, I
um,
wish Watch the Burn was live. I would love to. If anyone knows of an alternative site for Watch the Burn, if you could put that in the chat, I'd love to have it up to just see the cumulative burn that ETH has experienced now. It looks like Gwei is 24 right now. So again, I can get back to the presentation, but essentially, in the short term, who knows how long this will last? Gas should go down theoretically, just because we have those variable block sizes now. But of course, like at the end of the day, increasing the block size will probably just increase demand since gas prices are down. More people will try to put transactions through. So we really do need to wait for those L2 solutions. Um, Joseph asks, how does this change how I pick my gas price? So this is a really great question, and this is one of the core benefits of 1559. So I've seen on Twitter that like MetaMask probably isn't ready to go right now with updating their wallet and supporting this new system. But um, while I kind of talk through this, I'm going to see if I can pull up a tweet that explains this really well. But essentially, MetaMask is going to tell you, or whatever wallet you use is going to tell you what the current base fee is. So if the base fee is 10 Gwei, you don't have to worry about that. It's just going to be set automatically. And then there's going to be an amount you can select for the tip, basically how urgent your transaction is. And then on top of that, you can set whatever max fee you want. So again, as I mentioned, the max fee minus the tip minus the base fee is returned for you. So whatever isn't needed goes back to you. So you kind of have to do a little thinking there of, how are you willing to spend basically anything to get your transaction through? If not, paying the tip and the base fee should be very sufficient. Maybe Mike, the technicals on this, but the way the math works, there's a way to guarantee your transaction gets mined at some point in the next 10 blocks. I'm not sure if I think that's if you bet 3 times the tip. So if the tip is 2 Gwei, if you bid, I think a total of 8 Gwei plus the base fee, your transaction is guaranteed to go through in the next 10 blocks due to how the tip scales up and the base fee scales up based on demand. I'm not positive on that. I'm going to try to find that tweet. Mike, do you have any insights on that?
It's probably still an estimate. I mean, ultimately, your transaction is going to get included if the miner wants to include the transaction. So miners could still censor your transaction for no reason if they want. But that like if you're looking at it purely like as economic incentive wise, what you're saying is probably correct. Like roughly, if you do a 3x tip, then I think that's like what the intention is that it would be mined in, as long as the miner's being rational, within 10 blocks.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
I see here someone says that zero point 0.6 ETH has been burned so far. If you find a good alternative to watch the burn, again, please let me know. I'd love to have that live. But Tushar has another question. Great question. How will ETH become deflationary? Because even though ETH has a certain inflation rate. So I can cover this in the presentation in just a second. But it's estimated that right now ETH probably won't be deflationary. And this is expected and reasonable under the proof of work model. So when gas spikes and gas is over a certain price, ETH will be deflationary. But until the merge happens and we switch to proof of stake, which we have to reward validators less for each transaction and there's less inflation, up until then, it probably won't be deflationary. But it is expected that after proof of stake and the merge happens, we will have deflationary ETH. But again, if the network activity, if we see another huge bull market like we saw a few months ago, ETH will be deflationary for that period of time, but it's just hard to imagine we could sustain high enough gas levels to be deflationary right now. I see Philippe says total ETH burned right now is 0.72. And then there's some interesting calculation below that. Let's see. Just going to keep going across on the blocks here. Let's see. Yeah, it looks like that base fee is just increasing. It's at 2.8 now. Let's see. Go over here. The most. That's interesting. Yeah, so you can see average gas price is lower like we would expect. You can see the rewards for mining each block there on the right. Let me just click this one to see what the current base fee is. Also, if anyone has MetaMask right now, I would love to see. I would imagine they haven't updated the UI there. Legacy transactions will still work. You just won't get your excess that you paid refunded back to you. So they do have to update eventually. But the good news is your legacy transactions will go through. So not much to worry about there. Um, Philippe asked if there's a good site for keeping track. Yep, watchtheburn.com is a great site when it's up, but a lot of people are just spamming that and refreshing right now, I'd imagine. Joseph says, how does this change how we use Metamask? Well, the short answer is unless Metamask has updated it in the last 10 minutes, we don't know. As I mentioned before, this is up to them on how they're going to display the base fee, tip, and max fee situation. There's a lot of information there. They're going to have to figure out how to properly show. So I can't wait to see how they do that. I hope they do a good job. For right now, until there is an update, there's really nothing you have to do. Like I said, legacy transactions are supported, but there will be a significant change once they update their UI. So definitely something to make note of. You're welcome, Joseph. Let me just check watch the burn. So I'm going to stop sharing there. I did have a couple questions for you, Mike. Um, it seems like everything went smoothly. I'm going to check Twitter as you go through everything just to make sure no problems have happened. But let's assume something happened, like if there was an issue, what would happen, right? So like theoretically the market would be in turmoil, like there could be who knows what would happen, but if there was some type of error with 1559, how would the developers respond to that, the core dev team?
Not sure how the core dev team would respond. I mean, it could result in a chain split or like effectively like a rollback to a previous like the block before this happened. But it would probably be a big contentious thing in the community because I mean, unless it like clearly breaks so badly that like Ethereum is unusable, which at that point I don't think it would be a contentious fork. It would just be like, okay, the whole community rolls back. Um, it would probably end up being more like an Ethereum classic Ethereum situation where it results in like two kind of major chains being
Mm-hmm.
existing, and that's basically like two groups of miners. One's going one direction, one's going the other.
Gotcha.
But yeah, that's probably depending on like how severe whatever issue resulting from this is. Like, but yeah. Uh, Anything on Twitter yet? Are we seeing anything? It
It looks like
seems
everything's going smooth, and I did just find a website that we can watch, ultrasound.money. I'll link it here, and I'll just pull it up. If anyone wants to resource there that's still live. We have ultrasound.money and we can watch the burn there. So I'm just going to share that tab. Um, yeah, it looks like everything is going smoothly.
nice.
Awesome. All right, let me just activate that. So I'm not sure if you guys can see, it's probably kind of small, but on the top left here, you can see the gas price is 27.9 Gwei, which makes sense. I think before I checked the stream, it might have been like 60, which makes sense. So it's slightly lower than that. Again, it will go up as more transactions go through. This isn't expected to lower gas in the long term. Uh, Beautiful graphic
This
here.
is a hilarious site. I love this.
Yeah, and you can see as of now, 11.32 ETH have burned. It's pretty cool, and you can see the variation in different blocks here. Um, this
Nice.
is awesome. Yeah, sweet. And then you can, if you actually want, I did this a little earlier. I forgot about this. You can actually predict when supply will peak for ETH. So I think right now we have about 7 million ETH staked, but like let's assume after the merge, it should be more profitable to stake, so that could go up. Um, Gas price, I think whenever it moves to L2s and scaling solutions and after the merge, Gwei, 15 Gwei seems reasonable. And then if you estimate a merge date of the January 30th, 2022, you can see that ETH slowly becomes deflationary in 2022, it looks like. And again, as more people find out about Ethereum and as more people use the network, this price goes up for the base gas price. So you could see what happens if it goes to some crazy amount like 150 Gwei. This line slopes down even steeper, and ETH becomes even it's just an even stronger deflationary force. Ethereum Girl says Axie Infinity beats Uni V3. That's insane. That is pretty crazy. Yeah, it seems like over the past month, NFT or gaming and NFTs and have just taken off. It's nuts. I don't know what Wintermute is though. It sounds like the name of a game, but I've no clue what that is. Do you have any idea, Mike?
No, I was just about to look it up.
Bitcoin maxis in denial. Maybe they probably don't care. 16 ETH have burnt already in about 15 minutes. That's pretty cool. Let me just see here. Uh, yeah. Mike, do you have any thing you can share about the development process? So I actually know 1559 was proposed by Vitalik, I believe, a couple of years ago. Do you have anything you can share about like why that process takes so long? Who's building it? Is it like a centralized party that can make these decisions? How do they get consensus from the community? I know you're not too familiar with the core dev process, but would be curious if you have any insights there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not I'm not involved in that process in any way, but it is so you can go and look at the EIP page. You can look at each EIP has like a corresponding GitHub page where there's like probably years of chat history there. Usually there's just a lot of like public discourse around these things before they're actually adopted. Um, I believe like it's you can follow the decisions that like the ETH core team is making. So at some point, like the core team will decide to like include this in the next hard fork. Like they'll decide, okay, this EIP is going to be included. That's also public info. Like they say we're going to include this. They do that based on like a lot of community input and a lot of like this public discourse that's happening. And then after they include it, I assume they'll, actually build it into the next client, or
Hmm.
some group of people will build it into the next client, and then the last step is the miners actually adopting that upgrade. So you have
Gotcha.
like a lot of public discourse around these EIPs, like refining of the EIP, uh, yeah, acceptance of it into a hard fork upgrade, building into the upgrade, and then the miners accepting it to actually do the fork. So that process takes some time. On Ethereum, it's a lot faster than it is on Bitcoin. On Bitcoin, it
Right.
takes many years. On Ethereum, I think sometimes these things can go through in like, I think in some cases like less than a year.
Mm.
But yeah,
That's still long though.
it's still a long time. Yeah, it's not easy for these things to go through, and that's a good thing. I mean, it's they're very the whole community is very careful about what actually gets included in an upgrade, and
Gotcha.
there's a lot of steps. It's not like one. There's no centralized authority that can say, okay, this upgrade is happening. I mean, that's kind of like the nature of crypto systems. So it's an important property of something like Ethereum or Bitcoin that there's really no like one group that can decide. There's many steps to that.
Regarding what you said about running a client, is Go ETH the only client right now? I've heard that's somewhat of like I don't know if centralization risk is the right concern, but I've heard that's all we have right now under proof of work. But under proof of stake, there's multiple clients. Is that true?
Uh, Not exactly. So there's Go ETH is, or that's Geth. It's not. It's called, or I call it Geth or Geeth. I don't know. It's GETH. That's been around for a long time. That's the Golang implemented Ethereum client. Then there's what was called Parity. So it was the Parity client before was renamed to Open Ethereum. And I think that so the issue there, and probably why you're hearing that Geth is the only client, is I believe that the maintenance of Open Ethereum is like in question right now. Like who's funding the maintenance and like upgrade of that? I'm not sure if like this hard fork got included in the Open Ethereum client. I hope it did. But I believe like maintenance was transferred from like the I think Web3 Foundation. Like it was originally created by a company called Parity, and then recently, like in the past year, I think transferred to uh, the Gnosis team. So Gnosis started maintaining that client, and then I'm not sure if that's still. I've yeah, I'm not positive like where if the maintenance is still happening. Um, and that's basically like who's actually implementing these changes in the client.
Gotcha.
So there's really, yeah, short answer. There's two clients, not one.
Got it.
And then for V2 or ETH2, there are a lot of teams. Like there's more than two, I believe, that are working on clients. So that's a good thing.
Awesome. We can see here the fee burn is just accumulating. That's awesome to see. I don't know exactly whose address this is or what contract this is. I'd imagine it could be like a Coinbase or Binance or something like that, because I know Coinbase and Binance are some of the biggest spenders on Ethereum. Would be curious to see what that is, but obviously Uniswap is taking the lead, and then OpenSea has just, I don't know if you guys have seen the volume amount, but their volume is like 10 or 20x this last July than it was in the month previous. It's just crazy how much NFT volume we're seeing now, which is awesome. And now every time there's an NFT drop, a ton of ETH is going to get burned because gas is going to spike to like 800, and the vast majority of that gets burnt, which is awesome. Right now, it looks like maybe about 1.5 or 2 ETH are getting burned a minute. Obviously, once the network adapts to the changes, I think the rate the burn happens will go up, just because more transactions are going to go through because gas is slightly lower now. With that said, now is probably a great time just to go through that. The last slide I wanted to go to, now that this is live, I do want to just touch on the benefits that we're going to see over the next few days unfold, which is going to be awesome to see. So again, if people, please keep submitting your questions if you have them. We'll try to get to all of them. I'm just going to go through this last slide here. All right, so major benefits. Everything went through. It looks like successfully. I didn't see anything on Twitter as Mike was talking there a bit. Um, Better UX. So the main thing you guys are going to love is that everything you overpay on the network gets returned to you. So you can be comfortable bidding a huge amount for gas, and then everything, unless the tip is extremely high, a lot of that's going to be returned to you, which is obviously great news. In addition, there's ways to guarantee that your transaction goes through, as I talked about earlier. So that's very exciting. Next, we have that fluctuating block size. So hopefully this will help lower volatility, and going forward, gas will hover around, I don't know, maybe 50 Gwei, let's just say. But theoretically, volatility should go down, and the gas price should be more consistent. So you don't have to stay up Sunday or Monday in the middle of the night, wherever you are, and try to time when gas is cheap to deploy contracts or pay for a large transaction. On that note, Mike, I think we did that once for Brink, right? With the gas price to deploy the contracts were extremely expensive. I think a few ETH, right? At one point, the initial deploy, and so we we were trying to time that, but hopefully now that doesn't have to happen.
Yeah, probably still will to a certain extent. I don't think. I think we're still going to see ups and downs in the gas market. It
Yeah.
hopefully will be a little softer than it was before. I mean, we were seeing like crazy spikes, like DeFi summer last summer. We
Oh yeah.
had, I think, I saw a screenshot of Gwei like at like 2,000 or something. I don't know if it was definitely over 1,000 on certain spikes, and that's crazy. Um,
Well,
but
now we get to cheer
yeah,
that on. Like, we want, if you hold any ETH, you want the gas price to be like nearly as high as possible, unless you have a transaction that you need to go through.
well,
But hopefully, you're on an L2 then at that point, or a side chain.
yeah. I mean, ultimately, like we're with what we're developing, like we do have to deploy on L1 as well. Hopefully, like we don't have to do that very often, and our contracts are pretty lightweight. But like, yeah, I'm thinking about. I know it's good. It is good for the ETH holders now, which is related to this what Ethereum girl is saying here, that they're unexpectedly sad to see all the ETH trash. So you shouldn't be sad about
You
the
should
ETH
be
being
happy.
trash. You
Yeah.
should be happy. Yeah, because if you hold ETH, then it's good. It's good for all ETH holders. If ETH is burned, it decreases the supply and makes the ETH that is in existence more valuable. So you should be celebrating the burn.
And even more than that, like, I know I think a lot of like core people perhaps in the Ethereum community are like, we don't need to just cheer on the price and hope the price goes up for ETH. And to an extent that's true, but at the same time, the higher the price of ETH, the more secure the network is. So I think in the end, this is just a good thing to lower the supply. I mean, just it just secures the network better. And I think at the end of the day, in the future, and when I say the future, I mean 5 years, 10 years, etc. People won't necessarily need any ETH to make a transaction, and that's one of the things that Mike and I are working on at Brink. And I think a lot of apps are going to transition to this is you don't need to spend ETH for a transaction. You can actually sign a transaction for free in a proxy account, which is just a smart contract account that you have self custody over and full custody over. But when you use a proxy account and Ethereum developers are building more tooling around this, you can just sign a transaction, you pay no ETH, and part of the value of your transaction is taken out and given to the miners or validators in the future after the merge to compensate them for the work they provided there. So in the future, I could see a world where Ethereum could be a global settlement layer. People don't need to hold ETH to transact, but ETH is still a productive asset. It's getting burnt. The end miners and the end validators and executors are all paying for transactions with ETH, but it might be hidden from the end user. You might just have to worry about stable coins or whatever asset you would like to hold.
Yeah, I definitely think like that's the future we're gonna see, where like gas prices and ETH payments for transactions and transactions themselves are like completely abstracted away from the users that are actually like interacting with liquidity on the systems. That's something that like developers and miners and bots should have to worry about, not like a user that's trying to do a swap. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, we're what Justin and I are building is moving in that direction, and a lot of other projects as well.
Yeah, I mean, it just inherently makes sense. Like we've seen even in just this stream, and I think all of you all are probably more experienced in the Ethereum space if you found this channel and are watching it. So you guys are all familiar with it, but there's still questions, and I ask the same questions like, what does this mean on MetaMask? Like, how do I actually bid if I need a transaction to go through on the next block in the next 10 blocks, and if I don't have any urgency to it? It is confusing, and there's a lot of unknowns that you really have to be sophisticated or even a developer to figure out. So I do think I completely agree. Like at the end of the day, I think all of this will be removed from as a burden from the end user, and people will be interacting with Ethereum without paying ETH, without worrying about gas, and that'll all be automated away from them. Or at least that's the hope, because I think we can all agree that just sounds better. If you just don't, users shouldn't have to worry about knowing the technicals here.
Yeah, for sure. I'm
Yeah.
curious to see like how what MetaMask changes, if anything. Probably some of the advanced tab will change, like the advanced gas setting view, but I hope that they keep the kind of auto gas setting more or less the same experience.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm probably more of a power user. I would hope that there's like just a simple toggle of like urgent. Basically, I need my transaction happened in the I need it to happen in the next block or the next 10 blocks or the next minute or something like that. Then there's a normal like I can wait 5 minutes, and then there's a slow of like just put it through whenever you can. So it's my hope they do something like that, and we don't have to always go to the advanced tab or the edit tab to figure that out. But yeah, PDZ FPS asks, why is MetaMask not prepared for this? Um, I I don't know. Maybe it's a security issue. Maybe they are prepared for it, but they want to make sure 1559 goes through securely before. Um, uh, MetaMask is made by a team called Consensus. I know a couple people there. They're all great people, but I've heard like Consensus. Maybe they're kind of in like a too big to fail state. They're just like such an essential part of this industry. There's less of a fire under them to keep building. I don't know if you have any thoughts on this, Mike.
I know the MetaMask team. They're a solid team. It's one of the best products in Ethereum.
Yeah.
I'm sure that they, and I haven't been following like what their release schedule for this is, but I'm sure that they're doing this purposefully,
Yeah.
like without a doubt.
Yeah, I
And
mean, this is their
yeah,
one job, so I'm sure they know
and
they've heard about the update.
they do a good job. They're also, they're dealing with, if you think of them as a wallet, which they are, the amount of value that's held in this Chrome plugin that they release is absolutely staggering. So they have to be very careful about releases that they push, updates that they push, because they're dealing with user value of, I don't know the number, but it's a significant amount of value.
Yeah.
Obviously, like I probably it's one of the most used wallets in the industry. So yeah, they have to be careful. I'm sure they are being careful. Um, I haven't tried a transaction yet, but I'm sure it's still working. I'm sure we'll hear about it if it's not.
Yeah, someone would probably be in the comments letting us know that 1559 failed, which thankfully it's not happened. But and one other thing about MetaMask, like aside from the fact that they just have so many users and have done such a great job there and have contributed a lot to the community, so they're actually making I can't remember exactly how much it is per day off the MetaMask swap feature they added, but it's a staggering amount. So I think they take, I don't remember if it's like an additional 0.1% fee. There's like some percentage that they take from each swap through the MetaMask mobile app and also the browser plugin. If you were to use their aggregator, they take like a pretty significant percentage relative to like what we see in DeFi, and they're actually making millions a day from MetaMask, which is pretty crazy. I mean, good for them for doing it. If anyone has any resources they can share, I'll try to pull it up later on about how much money they're actually making a day. But it's a very successful product, clearly. Let's see. Any other questions? Will ETH be harder to fork now? I don't think. I mean, we're building a more robust ecosystem, which I suppose makes it harder. But like from a technical level, I'm sure some miners probably didn't migrate over to 1559 and are still running the old client and have like effectively forked the network, although it's probably not successful. Like the fiat off ramps are not supporting it. Coinbase has already said they're supporting 1559, so it probably makes it more secure and harder to fork because it's just a more stable ecosystem. This is just a better tech than what we had before. But anything from a technical level there, Mike?
No, I think it's not. Yeah, exactly what you said. I think ETH is harder to fork every day. The larger it grows, the more integrations there are,
The
the
Lindy
harder it is to
effect.
fork. Yes. um, yeah, we could fork it right now. We could make like Justin Bram ETH and call that a fork and see if anyone follows that fork. But that's going to be hard to
No
do.
one probably would.
No, well, I mean, you have some influence, but it's really maybe you could get a few people to like go on that path, but that's really what it takes is like massive community adoption and like support from um, exchanges and all the tools around Ethereum. It was hard to do when Ethereum Classic happened, and it's even harder to do now.
Yeah.
Nice. We have one follower for Justin Bramheath.
Awesome. Let's fork it. Just kidding. Um, I saw a comment there that 52 ETH and counting are burning. I'm going to switch back to that tab, but just wanted to make sure I didn't miss. Sorry, my dog's bouncing around in the background there. Uh, let's see. So we talked about the fluctuating block size. Um, Regarding security, as I mentioned before, if you were at the start of the stream, because the block size can fluctuate now, we have a more sustainable distribution and we can increase the duration of rewards for miners and validators. This is like the classic question with BTC is there's a hard cap of supply, 21 million. What do we do when all of that's mined? I think that's happening in like 100 years. I don't really follow it too closely, but I know there's a couple proposed solutions, but it's a great question, right? Like after it's why would a miner mine a transaction for no reward? It's like very expensive to do. With BTC, I think they're saying they can turn on fee, like increase the fee for each transfer or transaction, but it's already costly on BTC, and their L2 solutions aren't the best as far as I know right now. Again, I'm not an expert on it, so I can't really say. But this is just a huge benefit of 1559. We're seeing this problem that could potentially happen in the future, and we're just eliminating it. So yes, ETH never had a supply cap, but this reduces inflationary pressures and just builds more confidence in the system. That's where that meme ultrasound money comes from. A lot of people are saying hi to the dog. He says his name's Chewy, short for Chewbacca. He says hello back. Yeah, anything you wanted to add on that about the variable block size?
Um, yeah, I'm not like an expert on how that affects these systems. So I feel like, yeah, I don't know. I can't give an opinion on that. This is an
Sure.
interesting question though about why would miners agree to fork if it's a net negative for them? I think there's like a bit of kind of a game theory here, where if you're running a miner and you kind of anticipate that the rest of the community is um, going to proceed with the fork, then you're more likely to do that as well. So you could say, oh, this is a net negative for me, so I'm not going to do it. But if everybody else does it and you don't, then you won't be mining ETH anymore, and you won't be able to reap the rewards. So there might be a bit of that where it's like kind of miners anticipate that the rest of the community is going, so they kind of all go together. I think if there was like really strong community signaling for like let's not do this, uh, then at that point the miners would not do it. But if there's strong community signaling that it is going forward and a lot of support, then I think the miners are going to generally go along with that.
Yeah, so it's an interesting bit of game theory there. It's also fascinating to think about, like, if you are a miner, let's say you're even a large miner, like let's say you account for 10% of the mining of transactions on Ethereum. You don't, I mean, I don't, if you were to just say, I'm not going to mine this block, I'm not going to do it. So you'd have to hard fork the network. You'd have to get fiat off ramps and on ramps on board to offer your like ETH Classic 2 or whatever you would want to call it. And in addition to that, like your that fork network is probably less valuable, so you're making less money than you would if you just kept on 1559. So I think the hope here is that like it's a robust enough network of miners that this can't really happen. The incentives just don't really add up for that to happen. I mean, I think even if they're making less money with 1559, it's still going to end up being profitable because there's that natural supply and demand force. Um, so it's just hard to envision what options they truly have. And this isn't to knock miners at all. Obviously, they're like great contributors to the network, and they provide the security right now, and we're thankful for that. Tushar asks how variable block size affects security. So the main thing here is kind of what I mentioned earlier in the slide is that we can push out how long our rewards can last without being too inflationary. So I don't, Mike, what's the block reward right now for mining a block? Do you know by chance?
I do not know.
And maybe it was on.
We could
I think
look it
it's
up
actually
on
on
maybe
EtherScan,
EtherStats.
but it looks like okay. So it's I'm looking at one block. You guys can't see the screen, but it was a 2.4 Ether reward for mining one block. Um, so that's obviously expensive on the network. We could calculate how many that is a day. A block is about 10 to 13 seconds or so on average, I believe. Um, so that's a lot of ETH being minted. Now, if we were to just keep minting ETH and inflation could become hyperinflation, and there could be too much ETH in the network, there could be an excess of ETH. And then when the value of ETH goes down, the value of that reward to the miner goes down. And so the network becomes less secure because there's going to be less people mining it. It'll become more centralized, etc. So that's really the main security benefit that I can think of. I don't know if from a technical level, Mike, if there's anything that helps with security with fluctuating block sizes.
Yeah, I think nothing really from a technical level, but I think just in general, like it needs, like block space needs to be a scarce resource. If it was not a scarce resource, then the chain wouldn't work. Like the whole system wouldn't work. So yeah.
Yeah, and one other thing from centralization. So uh, the whole reason we could just say like to Mike's point, if it wasn't a scarce resource and we made blocks huge, gas would go lower. You could slam a bunch of transactions in each block, but then the network would become more centralized because it's actually much harder to run the network. You might need a more complex mining rig. So like I don't know if you guys saw the news, like all those pictures of BTC like mining warehouses almost, where it's like a completely professional operation. There's like rows and rows of miners, and obviously that still happens with Ethereum, but a lot of the mining activity would be centralized to like these very large institutions and even public companies in some cases that are like really contributing to the vast majority of mining volume.
Yeah, I'd say most mining operations on ETH and BTC are probably professional operations. But
Yeah,
I,
I have a
I,
friend. I have a friend in Boston, Gonzalo. If you're watching, he's a miner. Just does it in his apartment. He has a few graphics cards hooked up. I think I'm not. So hello.
yeah, that's a cool thing. Like you can still do that. It's hard to do that and actually like profit from it at this point, but you can. There's nothing stopping you from like joining a mining pool with like resources from your apartment.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I wish I was doing it years ago, but um, yeah. So just the last couple points here on the benefits, and then we can just take a final few questions and then call it a day. Um, Yeah, so the main thing here that another thing a lot of people are going to be excited about, probably the second thing, one of the biggest things is that ETH could become deflationary. All of that activity on the Ethereum network directly benefits ETH because ETH gets burnt. So if you see an NFT dropping and gas spikes to 1,000 Gwei, you can you can be excited now as opposed to upset that your transaction is not getting mined for like a simple Uniswap swap. Um, and then lastly, again, this isn't something to rely on. This wasn't the intent of EIP 1559, but there's potentially lower gas in the short term because of the variable block size there. So this will get filled up. I don't know if you guys remember around DeFi summer, the block size was increased slightly, and it helped for like a few weeks. You know, like we went from having a 300 Gwei average to a 100, but all of that benefit's probably gone away. There's just more activity on the network, which is great, and now that contributes to burning ETH. Um, yeah. So with that said, if there are there any last minute questions here, let's see. Does Ethereum Girl have another one here? Yeah, this is more just a comment that staking is a centralizing force because people don't have the funds themselves to become validators, and hopefully that changes. Yeah, so I think this is a real concern. I mean, that like a Lido or Coinbase or Binance, and I think there's a few others that have the majority of the staking power could have some control over the network. Hopefully, with something like Rocket Pool, which is a more decentralized staking solution, we can limit that. But it is a concern, and the concern there is like there's less. You don't really have to sell your staking rewards, whereas ETH miners they always have to stake or they always have to sell a portion of the rewards they get because there's just a lot of costs there. There's a lot of electricity costs, maintenance costs, graphics card costs, etc. Electricity costs. So they're always selling a portion of their ETH reward, which although that creates sell pressure, it is beneficial to the network because we're just distributing ETH more widely and no one's getting a large share of it. But it is true with staking and the new process, like you don't, it's not really that intensive from an operational perspective with your computer processing power and electric power. So it is a concern there. I haven't seen too much that alleviates those concerns, but it's my hope that the community steps up and starts running their own validators. Cool. I think Mike, you dropped for a second, but it looks like you're back now.
Yeah, my internet decided to kick out for a brief moment.
Yeah, no worries. So yeah, just the absolute last thing here. I don't want to bore you guys with this presentation. Some of you might have already seen, but it's estimated that under proof of work, 150 Gwei or higher on average in ETH1 would be net deflationary. So that's proof of work. And then under proof of stake, after the merge happens sometime early next year, we only need a 20 Gwei base fee to become deflationary, which is obviously much more doable. The L2s are going to be competing for block space and sending a lot of transactions back to mainnet. Yeah, so that's all I really want to go over presentation wise. Perhaps I'll let people put in their last questions, and while they do that, I'm just going to broadcast the burn page now. It looks like a significant portion of ETH is now burnt. Yep. So it looks like 92 and a half ETH have been burnt. I don't know what this London gift is. That's interesting. Maybe someone like built
Hmm.
something and deployed it and gifted it to people. Whatever that is, that's fascinating. It's probably like just a spam token or something, but I have no idea. Let's see. There's a lot of other random tokens. Like, again, you don't even have to know what this means just to know that it's contributing to a ton of ETH burn. Um, okay, someone's saying it's just a shitcoin. Probably that makes sense. I'll check it out after the stream. Um, Yeah, unless there's are there if there's no last minute questions, I want to thank you all so much for joining. Uh, Obviously, this is an incredible event. Some people are more excited about this than ETH 2, just because once that ETH 2 merge happens, like that's it. It's a huge update. It's incredible. We're moving to proof of stake, but that's like the extent of the benefit. Which again, not to understate that, but with 1559, the benefit continues on. So as long as Ethereum's a thing, as long as 1559 is a thing, and we don't decide to remove this aspect from the network, ETH will be net deflationary and ETH will be burnt, and the rewards go back to the network, which is obviously very exciting. Yeah, I don't know if you have any closing thoughts, Mike. It looks like questions have kind of winded down. I think everyone's probably excited to make a transaction and test it out and see if their favorite wallet is updated.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I'm definitely going to find out over the next couple weeks how interacting with this is from a developer standpoint. So I will have more thoughts on that later. But yeah, it's exciting that this went through. It seems like definitely like a positive thing for Ethereum. So
Yeah.
yeah, very cool. And thanks for putting this together, Justin. This was great.
Oh, yeah, no, thank you all so much for watching. I know some of you are so excited about this, and we appreciate having you here. Thank you again so much. This is one of the most viewed live streams. If you haven't done so, the Discord, it's the DeFi Innovation Discord, is a great resource for anyone that has questions about 1559 or anything else. You can just join us there, and the admin team is happy to help you, and so many people there are happy to help. If you're interested in learning more about Brink, you can come in the DeFi Innovation group and ask there, or you can come to the Brink Discord and check out the Brink Twitter, which I will link below. But it all should be pretty easy to find. I'm sure you guys can find it there. And please subscribe. And again, thank you all so much for watching and joining us instead of the Bankless stream. Um, yeah, I see some nice thank yous there. We really appreciate it. Until the next time, thank you all. Have a great day. Enjoy 1559. Enjoy the update, and we appreciate your support.